Can I just get both virtually and then also in person? Can I get a round of applause for everyone for making out to an in-person event? By a raise of hands, like, how, is it still strange to be sitting around so many folks right now? Yeah. So yeah, absolutely grateful for everyone's participation and joining us. This is a nice co-promoted event with our chapter in Melbourne, Australia. The chapter director, Chris, down there was very kind in joining us. And it's so important to do that, especially for this particular talk, because we're featuring an organization that is launched and based out of here, Grand Rapids, but it's a global initiative. And they're launching a program both here in Grand Rapids and Australia. So excited to have both chapters participating. I'd like to do some introductions because this has been a crazy year for all of us. And with Startup Grind, we ended up publishing more events than ever, having more participation than ever. Obviously, revenue is down like 80%, but that doesn't matter. All of our chapter directors, you know, we don't do this for a salary. We do this because we care about our flock of entrepreneurs. And the Globe's directors just like jumped into action, and just the overwhelming amount of support globally for all of our global entrepreneurs has just been so amazing. And then it also is an opportunity for the Globe's directors to come together as a family, which is the only reason why I'm able to reach out to Chris and say, hey, is this a good idea? And obviously the digitization of everything means that virtual and in-person hybrid events like this, it's not going to feel awkward, right? Like, does this even feel awkward right now? No, like we got complete strangers staring at us from around the planet. And it's just like, it's just better than being in my closet though, like my closet office. So locally here in Michigan, we've had a really great year because I was also able to connect with a lot of local ecosystem stakeholders in Michigan and activate some more Startup Grind chapters. So I'd like to introduce, we have Michael from the brand new Marquette chapter. He's joining us virtually. Michael, if you could do us a favor and give us an introduction, maybe just a little quick intro on you and what it is that you've just launched up there with Campfire.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate it. Yeah, so we just finished our last cohort training a week ago. So we're fresh out the gate when it comes to Startup Grind. And from our experience thus far is Corey has kind of spearheading getting all the local chapter directors in the state of Michigan to collaborate and how we can really build a robust statewide ecosystem to eventually take that regionally and nationally and globally. So what we're trying to do here at Campfire Coworks is we are a co-working space and we have members that come here and work out of our space. And we have a lot of successful entrepreneurs, and there's a lot of people that show interest in entrepreneurship as founders, as solopreneurs, and we want to connect them to an ecosystem of support, education, and inspiration. So we're really excited to be part of the journey.
Thanks a lot, Michael. And it's really important to also recognize, and we've learned this last year, that innovation happens everywhere. It's in small communities, it's in large communities. You don't have to move to the hub, that type of thing. And so it's really great to have a city like Marquette leading the charge as far as launching a chapter. We also are relaunching Detroit with Faris Alami, which is an incredible ecosystem builder himself. Traverse City is getting a new chapter pretty soon. And we're looking for someone to take over Lakeshore, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, if anyone here or listening has any ideas on an entrepreneur that might want to take that on. So another thing is that's been awesome is that I got a co-director after about a year and a half now, and her name is Megan Norton, and she's actually up in Marquette, hanging out up there and not locally here in Grand Rapids. So Megan, if you can introduce yourself real quick.
Hi guys, this is Megan Norton. I actually live right there in Grand Rapids. I've worked in that little space studio before. Hi Alicia, hi everybody. Down there back at home. Happy to be up here in Marquette and check out this co-working space while I'm visiting family and taking care of family up here. So you'll see me around. You've seen me on the AIGA West Michigan board. You've probably seen me associated down there with Grand Circus as boot camp. Happy to be here with Startup Grind and Growing West Michigan.
Awesome. So excited to have Megan's participation and support. Now I have two local introductions. I have both of our sponsors here. Alicia, would you be able to come up and sit in your chair here and tell us a little bit about Little Space Studio? Because she has volunteered to be our home locally. And as I said, this isn't a salaried position. This is all a volunteer effort. And so thank you so much for helping us out.
Thank you so much. As much as I want to talk forever, I will keep this super brief, I promise. I'm so enlightened to have you all in this space. My team especially is just really excited because we started Little Space Studio a couple years ago. Our focus has always been on supporting creative professionals and people who work for themselves, basically today's and tomorrow's entrepreneurs, right? So having a space for them to gather and to build new ideas and to network, it's so paramount, especially in creative fields. And so COVID was very, very hard on us. We got through it. We're actually celebrating an official ribbon cutting June 16th. There will be, thank you. There will be events virtually the entire week. We're going to keep it COVID compliant, but we will have a ribbon cutting on that. But just we are a membership-based space. We're building different mechanisms into our business model to see what creatives need, whether it's space, technology, access, affordable job opportunities. We're exploring all paths and building all paths right now. So that's us.
Yeah, Little Space is a really incredible support system for that for the arts community, creator community. I'm a member of their Slack group, and nonstop there's like, oh, there's this job opportunity, oh, there's this opportunity, who knows somebody who needs to do this. And if anyone in the crowd locally here in West Michigan knows of a creative that's been stuck in their closet office for a year and a half and could use a place like this is a good family to plug into. One last local introduction. It's a real great pleasure to introduce Stephanie from Grow Business Today. She is sponsoring and supporting us here at this chapter.
Thank you, Corey. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I just love walking into a room like this and a space like this and just feeling the energy and the collectiveness and the we can do mentality. So our company, Grow Business Today, we believe in all of those things. And we also believe in empowering women entrepreneurs to live their best life and their best dream. And we are a full service growth and marketing agency. And what we do is we help all businesses lay the plan, the solid foundation to grow from, and then help grow profits to lead impact in the world and the communities in which they serve, and also propel other people to move forward and talent to connect in the space. And we're really excited because, of course, working with Startup Grind and Corey has been a tremendous mentor and just opened a whole new world with Startup Grind after we met a year ago. But what we're really excited about is we're in the process too of creating a space and working with Little Studio as well, but a space where it's a co-working space for entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs. All are, of course, welcome. However you identify, you're welcome there. But we have a business broker, Thrive Acquisition, who leads in commercial real estate and brokerage, our company, which is a growth and marketing agency. And then Dr. Andrea Blue, who's joining us virtually today, who her company specializes in talent and workforce development in our Black and Brown community, and creating a space for women to have access to those resources right there and then take the business to the next level. And my wonderful partner, Nikki, and I, we started this business a year ago, and we left our corporate roles and we leaned into faith over fear. And we said, you know what, we have two choices. We can go back, and don't get me wrong, we were living a good life, but we weren't living our purpose. And it's about living your purpose in life. And when you connect and you have a partner like Nikki and people like Erica, who has come into my life, our director of social impact, is just phenomenal. And now Stephanie Ford, who I met 2 years ago, just launched her business a couple of weeks ago, and she got her business cards today. That's the kind of stuff we want to do in Grand Rapids. And that's the kind of stuff we want to do at Grow Business Today. So thank you, Corey, for having us here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Startup Grind in May, every May we have Women's Month. It's hashtag SG Women. If you're doing anything on social right now, hashtag SG Women. So this is Women's Month. Every May we celebrate women across the planet in entrepreneurism. and here locally in Grand Rapids, really excited to have these guests. And we have sorry, these guests. Thanks. First, however, we do have a video, a Start of Grind video that we're going to show, and then we'll get into the program.
Every year, Startup Grind hosts our SG Women Month, proudly recognizing the accomplishments of successful women leaders all over the world. These women are founders, venture capitalists, engineers, executives, educators, and more, who represent our community all around the world. This month, SG Women Month is proudly presented by Silicon Valley Bank and Google for Startups.
Joining us from Failure Lab, we have Anna, we have Chrissy, and we have Chloe. And so I'd like to start with you, Anna. Maybe just a nice little background on who you are, your story. Then we'll move on to Chrissy and then Chloe.
Turn this on.
No, I think it's already on.
Hello. Is it working? It's good. Okay. I'm Anna Baeten. I am from Grand Rapids and born and raised here, and left for a little bit, as people do, and then came back about 6 years ago. I work in philanthropy and also with Failure Lab. So Failure Lab is really the passion project around how do we really do cultural and systemic change around how we view the humanness of people. And so specifically our entryway into that is through, candid conversations about failure. And that is, the lens by which we look at everything. But really the point is, how do we see whole people? How do we live as whole people? How do we foster the skills and the aptitudes that are necessary for us to live our best and most creative lives? And so we're very excited to be here, specifically around launching Failure Lab She, which is what happens when you invite women into your company. Is they're like, you're doing super great stuff. And also maybe you could do this because this would be really fun too. So that's essentially what happened, is that Chrissy and I came in and we were like, yeah, but also we could do more for the girls. So that's how Failure Lab She was born.
Yeah, I'm Chrissy Heyne. I grew up in Chicago and have spent time in a lot of other cool cities. I made my way to Grand Rapids about 8 years ago. I was a third grade classroom teacher, and then spent the last 15 years working at Teach for America in senior leadership, running our teacher training program. And I got a divorce in 2018. So that failure, what felt like an epic seismic failure that completely shook my internal and external snow globe, led me to leave my awesome job in the middle of a pandemic last August to work for myself, which I was too scared to do for about a month, which led me to apply to do a job that was basically doing what I wanted to do. And I had my mentor be like, why the hell are you applying for a job? I'm like, because like they do what I want to do, but like with a company, and that feels really safe. And I had my second interview with them and I was so confident. Like I call my mentor, like, I did so well at that interview that I'm wondering why I should work for them now. When they call me to offer this job, I'm going to have to like really think about it. I did not get that job, which then led me to make a post on Facebook about like, hey, I want to do corporate training, talk about culture, leadership, management. And the first person to comment on that post was Anna, who was like, yes. And so now I work with Failure Lab, doing some of their corporate design. So
that's a journey. I love it. I love it. I love that story. And then also excited to hear from Chloe.
Yes, hello, good morning and good evening. So it's morning here in Australia, and so my journey with Failure Lab has been long. So there's only ever been one event for Failure Lab in Australia, and that was 5 years ago. And I was one of the speakers, and that was my first introduction with Failure Lab. And since then, we've kept in touch and maintained the communication. And now with COVID was that opportunity for all the programs to redesign, and that was where we were like, okay, now's the time to bring Failure Lab to Australia and to roll it out. So it's been quite an exciting journey to be collaborating and part of the Failure Lab team and spreading Failure Lab across another whole continent.
Thank you for being up nice and early and being willing to do this cross-continentally. Really appreciate that. So I have a couple questions that I wrote in the description of the event, and just to mix it around, you touched on this a little bit earlier, Anna. Why is it important to center women in this conversation?
Because Chrissy and I are women. and and we hijack everything. And no, but in all seriousness, both Chrissy and I have spent really our entire careers working on development of people. And very, very often those people are women. And so I think that we can all agree that the landscape is not built for us. And yet we continue to kick ass. And so as we were thinking about our general curriculum and redesigning that through the lens of COVID, through the taking that opportunity to really like take it down to the studs and figure out exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. Chrissy was an enormous help with that. But really our passion is around developing leadership with women, with minority communities, trying to change the conversation around what are valuable skills and ideas and how do people become powerful. And so those are the things that, you know, get us really excited. Chrissy sometimes yells at people at pickleball, like, you know, like, so it just seemed like a super natural fit for us to develop this programming. And then, you know, like really through the lens of COVID is that COVID has impacted women so disproportionately. And so like this stuff is always really, really, really important. And right now it's even more important. Women are taking a 30% cut from being in the workforce. It's crazy, just like as a woman trying to navigate life and family and virtual school and all the crap that's been happening, is that it's so apparent in so many ways that the systems are not built for us. And so what do we do about that? And so, you know, in talking to Chrissy, and what I mean by talking, I mean bitching, is what do we do? Like, so if you're committed to systems change, that's amazing, right? And we need to be working on that. But also we need to be caring for each other in the process, right? So like, what do we do to give women the space to be able to do that, the support to be able to do that, and like just a community of like super brilliant people to be able to give ideas and context and frame. And this is true for all people, but it really is like the more successful you are, oftentimes the lonelier you are, right? And so it's like we need all of those spaces, we need all of those things. And so this is what happens when two women hang out in COVID.
Yeah, and I'll add, I mean, I think the more we were digging into general corporate training around the ways in which failure stifles risk, innovation, creativity, the more I was like, I cannot facilitate to a group of people. Like if we all worked together, we would not all experience failure the same. In fact, studies show women, you know, women's failures are judged like 30% more critically than men's for the exact same outcome. And that's especially true if she's occupying a job that we associate with men, which, spoiler alert, is every well-paying job. And so we were sort of like, you know, all of the badass women I know, they all feel like they're failing. Like they all feel like, I'm not a great wife, I'm not a great mother, my team can't count on me, I didn't do this. And so these conversations around expectations, around risk taking, around sort of the double bind of confidence, yet I'm kind, I'm compassionate, but I'm assertive, like all of these dances that we do. Like, let's create a space where women can talk about it, interrogate it, and hold each other accountable to not like even pulling ourselves into that bullshit. So we do get pretty excited, and I do yell at a lot of old men during pickleball as a result.
Great.
Yeah. So it's really a trifold endeavor.
Chloe, anything to add?
Oh, absolutely. It's like we hold people up on pedestals and forget that, they're human. And no matter how successful a person is, we can be our own worst enemy, and that self-talk can talk us down. And it's always it can be so rewarding when someone can come up and say, wow, you actually made a big difference to my life. And you're like, oh wow. And it's sometimes we can be surprised at the impact that we are really having. And one of the things that was mentioned just before, in terms of how quite often, men will apply for a job if they're only, maybe a little bit eligible, whereas women might pull back and go, oh, I'm not 100% eligible for that opportunity, I'm only 80%, and they don't apply. And when I first saw that research, that did inspire me to go, well, I'm going to give it a shot. And there was this dream job, and I thought, oh, it is a leap. There is a jump between where I am now and that opportunity. And having just seen that research, I thought, well, I'm going to give it a shot. And I went in there, and then they came back and said, you're a standout candidate, and I got that opportunity. And if I'd gone with my original instinct to pull back and not apply, I would have missed out on that. And so that was a real life lesson for me, to just give it a shot and put yourself out there. And by not fearing the failure, there is that opportunity to fulfill that dream job and dream life.
Cool. Thank you. Now, these questions that I have here, I pulled from the videos that you have on your website. So everyone's welcome to go to the website and dig in a little bit deeper, especially if you're virtual. It's not rude to do that now.
Lots of videos of me and Chrissy talking. It's great.
But there's some of the curriculum details around there, which are really, it's really awesome to read. So from that, so why is talking about failure so hard that it might seem like an elementary question to ask at an event that we're interviewing people from Failure Lab, but like, why is it so hard to talk about? And what are some common definitions so we can be sure we're talking the same language?
So many questions, Corey, in
Oops.
one question.
Oops.
Yeah. Where should we begin?
And we only have a few.
I know. So I think one of the big reasons that Failure Lab is so impactful and so sort of universally compelling is that there is a strong disconnect between what we understand intellectually and what we know to be true physically in our bodies. Yes. So if you take a room full of relatively intelligent humans, or very intelligent humans, like this room full of very intelligent humans, and you talk to them about like, okay, so what is the process? Like, how do you get to where, like, intellectually we understand that you have to break some eggs, right? Intellectually, you understand that like there is a process and that you don't win right away. Like, that's something that we understand. Biologically, no. Like, right. So like, there's so much about who we are as human beings that fights against what our mind knows. And so I think that, Failure Lab is so, so important because it asks us to look at things that are simple and obvious, but not easy, right? And so being able to see and share, and, vulnerability is kind of an overused word right now, but really like this kind of candid observation without judgment of who people are and what the actual for real process is, yes, it's inspiring, but it's also very humanizing, right? And it makes us feel like our process, which is the process, is okay. And so that's, I think, why it's so, so important. Like when you look at how companies define their core values and how organizations, like maybe like 10 or 15 years ago, like everybody put the word innovation on their wall, right? Like, like it was like innovation, creativity, right? And like for us, we're like, okay, so how do you actually get there? Right? You fall on your face a lot, like a lot, right? And so why are we afraid to talk about that part when we're going to elevate these other pieces? And then you take the modern world that we're living in right now, where you see only people's successes, you see only the stuff that's great. And in some ways that's inspiring if it hits you at the right day. And some days it's totally defeating, right? Because what we're really missing is that human connection of like, yes, I see you, I see your process, I see what's happening. And then could we take it one step further and go, I support you.
Yeah. And I think on the question of like, why don't we talk about it? That is sort of the question I think that we push people to answer for themselves, you know, and that might depend on the failure, right? So a divorce, sometimes you don't get to not talk about that because everybody knows those two people just got a divorce, you know, and they don't really know, should I say something? Should I not? There's a ton of failures we can hide every day, and we do. And one of the activities we do with people is ask them like, when you say failure, you know, what are you even talking about? And the words that come up most frequently are like goal, like, right? So the goal, I had a goal, it wasn't met, or expectation. And then it's like, we got to unpack that. Like, whose expectation? Why did you have that expectation? And so, you know, we all hide failures probably for something to do with shame. I mean, this is some like woo-woo Brene Brown good therapy stuff, you know, like if you engage in that, you know. But to Anna's, you know, point, that totally stifles connection. It totally cuts you off from support. It cuts you off from growth. And there is a ton of research and skills around how to navigate that, right? So like growth mindset stuff and all the Carol Dweck, whatever her last name is, you know, like there are actual ways to make sense of the failures that we have, large and small. And part of our passion, I think, is offering those questions to people and really thinking like, why are you afraid of failure? In which area of your life? Why does it feel this way? Why does it feel big, small? And then offering skills about how to navigate it a little more gracefully, knowing that like, you don't get to go through this ride without a lot of tough shit that we're all not talking about. And we're just like, here we are. Like, I'm great. Are you great? Coke is great. Here we are. We're in person, you know, like, and so like bringing that more into spaces for connection, whether it's a company or a group of, you know, badass women who just need new community. That's kind of our goal and objective.
Cool. Chloe?
Yeah, one of my experiences has been that whenever you've had a failure, you because you're immersed in that lens, you think that everyone else sees you through that lens. Whether or not people know that what's going on for you, you think it's really transparent, like that, like you're wearing it on your sleeve and that everyone can see it. And so that's a really interesting thing, because quite often people don't even know. And one thing that I've found is that whenever at that point where you kind of think, oh, I've had this failure, it's only a failure at that point in time. Because when I last had this big challenge, I looked back at the patterns in my life and I was like going, okay, every time I thought I'd had a failure, it ended up being an opportunity that then led me to the next phase of my life and the next opportunity and the next journey. And if it weren't for that situation that pushes you forward to not hold on to what was and to actually embrace the next stage in your life. And so when I had this revelation that going, wow, every time I've had a failure, it's actually worked out really well. So when I was sitting in that current failure, I was like going, well, I'm going to trust that process. And then I no longer felt that fear and anxiety around, and then the grief and loss for that change. And instead I was like, I'm going to be patient with this and allow this process of transformation to happen. So looking beyond that immediate situation and moment, and allowing to be open to receiving and bringing forward the next chapter.
You mentioned some keywords there. So we have failure, we have grief, we have loss. There's physical trauma that occurs from these things. Like it's I think from your website, it's like it hurts my body. How can we recognize what's happening on the physical and mental?
Pay attention. One of the things I think is really great about living now is that so much of this information is much more accessible than it was before. And which is lovely and really, really useful. It's very common now for us. We have so many resources. We have great scientists. We have amazing people doing amazing work in these fields around neuroscience, around trauma, understanding, unpacking all of this stuff. And it used to be that information was only for a specific subset of the world. And now it is available to all of us. And I think, when we talk about failure, and as Chrissy and I were developing this curriculum, the question that kept coming back around was like, what is it that we do? Like, what is specific about Failure Lab that is like a thing? And the reality is that we don't do anything special. Like, there's a lot of people doing a lot of really great stuff, right? There's, and really the answers are pretty simple. But Failure Lab is a really compelling, interesting invitation to that inquiry. And it brings us into that conversation about like, what is happening in my body? What is happening? But it's only one entry point, right? Like, so we can talk about like failure as it relates to stress response. We can talk about failure as it relates to trauma, all of those things. But there's lots of other entry points too. And I think that as people, we need to embrace repetition. And we need to receive information from all different places. And so I feel really lucky about Failure Lab that it's like this very compelling format for us to be able to talk about things. So like when specifically to your question, I talked a lot about not your question, but specifically to your question about like, what's the physicality? The reality is that if you go to a meditation class, or if you go to a yoga class, or if you enlist in the Marines, they're going to teach you things about how to control your stress response, right? Those things are fairly simple. They're fairly consistent, right? And everybody can do them. And so that's the piece around, what we're trying to get out into the world with Failure Lab is that, are there other entry points into it? Yes. Should we all sit with ourselves in silence and breathe a little bit? Yes. Should we understand what our body feels like when it's stressed out? So at least we can have a conversation about it when we like lose our shit. And, like these are all of the things, right? If you go to your therapist, you're going to have a similar conversation, right? If you go to any place, you're going to have a similar conversation. So I think that there's nothing magic about that, but the magic piece is that we have to keep hearing it over and over again. And we have to immerse ourselves in communities that make us want to do that practice.
I don't have anything to add other than Failure Lab. We don't do anything special. Definitely needs to be like a bumper sticker or a t-shirt. If that's not an endorsement, I don't really know what is.
We're totally fired. Like, no, we are special. We do things nobody else does.
Chloe?
I just really want to make sure we got that gem, like captured it.
I suppose this is something everyone who's in the room or online to think about. If you're on a roller coaster, what is the reaction that your body is having? You're having sweaty palms, your heart's racing a bit. And the thing is, some people love roller coasters and some people hate roller coasters. The thing is, everyone is having the same physiological reaction of a heightened experience. The thing is, people are interpreting it differently. Some people interpret it as I'm going to die, and that they think that those physiological reactions means that they're going to die, that they're in danger, and they feel fear. Other people experience those same physiological reactions and go, wow, I'm excited. That means I'm excited. This is a heightened experience, and I'm exhilarated. So it's the same challenge. They're on the same roller coaster. They're going through the same chaos. They're on the same ledge. And choosing to have either a pleasurable experience or a painful experience. And that's what failure is in terms of what experience do we want to take from it.
I love how this is happening where Chloe is just like giving me my next questions. This is so awesome. These are the best ones. So you mentioned how we're reacting physiologically in similar ways. I am really curious about the different archetypes. So
people love quizzes. So we were like, let's make a quiz. And also it was COVID, so I had time. And so we went through many iterations of this assessment. We really wanted to make sure that it did not overpromise and that we weren't trying to be sociologists. But like I said, a lot of the information is in the world right now. And from from like an adult learning perspective, which is our background, is around not just how do you have great information, but how do you engage people with that information? Like, how do you make them want to learn about it? And so there's some psychology behind that too, right? Like, how do you make it compelling and interesting so that they stay long enough to actually be impacted by it? Because I am a self-development nerd and have taken all of the assessments and all of the lands. And I really enjoy that. When we went to go create the assessment, we did a lot of research. We had a lot of iterations, but the archetypes are based around that basic fight, flight, freeze, reaction. And all humans experience all of those reactions all of the time. And so, however, I think that like all assessments, for most of us, we have a dominant reaction, right? So we have a way that we are first reactive. We all know people that fail at something and get really pissed off, right? We all know people that fail at something and are thinking 5 years about the one terrible conversation that they had and nobody else remembers that, but they are running it over and over and over. And it's you.
Obsessor. Yeah, we'll give her the quiz.
Obsessor. Yeah, exactly. So we did a lot of, so we broke apart the archetypes. There's 6 archetypes. So there's, fight, flight, freeze archetypes. And it's really just a tool for us to, in a fun and engaging sort of gamified way, for us to first ask that question, which is so, so important, is like, what is my most instinctual response to failure? And really it's like, are there patterns? Like when I look at myself, all self-development work is about really looking at yourself and going, are there things that I can predict about the way that I interact with the world? And so that's what the archetypes are for. And it's been amazing because like literally sometimes I'm like, and I'm writing fortune cookies and it's so fun. And but through, now we've had several hundred people take this archetype assessment and it really, really resonates for people. And it does what it's supposed to do, which is not diagnose, but it turns the lens inward for people to start thinking about how and why they respond the way they respond. And much like really, really importantly, how much space is there for them between their initial response and how they behave, because that's the place that's really, really important.
I was just going to add, so I get to facilitate a lot of content. And I think if like I asked any of you, like, what's your relationship to failure? I think that would be a very overwhelming and maybe difficult, like, where do I start with that question? What do you mean? Like, I don't know. And I think as the facilitator, what the archetype offers is like a really great entry point because, and Anna's downplaying what she's written because it's not a cute little quiz. It's really freaking awesome. And
it's nothing special though, right?
It's not that special. It's very not special. Like it's nothing special, but it is awesome. Exactly. Correct. And it offers this, like, we're going to give you like a little bit of language based on what you answered that might give you, and it opens up that conversation so quickly. And so for example, I'm a happy denier. Which probably if you talk to me for like 7 minutes, we got a lot of good people who are happy deniers. You'd be like, that lady's a happy denier, even if you know the word, like I do have a great ability to be like, I didn't get the job. Like, almost like a man, honestly, based on like honestly, like men, and research does show this, men mostly, not every area, not every man experience failure. Like they can get a D on a test, like, shit, that test was harder than I thought it was going to be. And women are like, I'm horrible. Like I have no intellectual capabilities. Like I mean, I'm exaggerating, but like not by that much. And I tend to be able to just kind of like put a little pep in my step, like, you know, like, oop, didn't get that. But, and the dark side of that is like avoiding, you know, like hiding, ignoring, minimizing other people's big feelings or felt experiences. And so when you give me that language, I'm like, oh, I could talk about failure now. Like I got these little bullets, and also I understand you and your obsessor, and it helps you not only understand yourself, which is powerful, but the really cool part of the groups facilitating is hearing like, wait, you didn't even try because you were afraid to fail. Like you know, like I would never do that. I would just try. Like, and you know, you start to understand like, wow, at work, when I manage that person, that's probably what they were thinking. Like that, like that isn't even on my radar. And so the assessment offers this, like, it's not the end all be all, but it's such a great entry point to the conversation, in understanding yourself and others.
I'll just add to that too. Sorry, Chloe, you can do something really great in just a second. So the other thing I think it does is that one of the main objectives of Failure Lab overarchingly is how do we become more skillful at doing uncomfortable things? Because all the good stuff is on the other side of discomfort, right? And that was one of the main objectives for the archetype assessment, was how do we give people shared language that depersonalizes conversations? Right. So if we have these archetypes and we have this language, it's not like, Chrissy, why the hell are you the way that you are? It's happy, like totally crazy. It's more like we can be like, oh, I think that you might be having a little bit of your happy denier lens on there, but there's also this other piece that we can talk about. And now I'm not talking about like Chrissy's soul and humanity. I'm talking about using this language that gives us a tool to be able to have more profound and more productive conversations and keep the people safe.
Absolutely, it is a language, and that's what's been so beautiful in the Failure Lab team, where we are actually able to have this conversation, going, oh yeah, I'm a survivalist, so that's why I'm responding that way. So not only is it a useful way of coming to understand yourself better in terms of how you react to things, and the lens through which you see the world. It's also really useful at better understanding others and your relationship with others, in terms of really appreciating that, oh wow, other people react to failure and challenge in a different way to me. And it's not that it's right or wrong, it's that we have different ways. Because quite often before doing this sort of before recognizing that there are the 6 archetypes, we each think that everyone sees the world the same way that we do and interprets it the same way. So it's a fantastic insight in recognizing that, and so it heightens that sense of empathy and understanding of others.
Again, Chloe just lobbing me the ball. This is really great. You're the best sidekick ever. So she's reading my mind. We do not run through life alone. We spend a lot of time in teams. You've mentioned some great tools and how we can work inward and then therefore also have greater empathy towards others. If we are managers of teams and we care about learning about being better managers, we can sometimes run into news like creating a psychologically safe place increases productivity and all these things. Can you speak about like is this program arming people for those types of situations, so they finish Failure Lab and then they're launched into team and other people? Like, how does that work?
Chrissy and I have many feelings about this. So, the content is really, we love the content, but we also have a pretty specific sort of theory of change about how organizations and groups change. And unfortunately for most of us, it takes a freaking long time, right? Like it's a lot, like it's a practice. So like we do this whole failure and practice is the idea that there are things and they're simple, but you must do them consistently over time. And so, yes. And being on the training side for so long, one of the things that, we're really hoping to do is give framework that actually works, because it's in just being inspiring and interesting is one set of skills, and then actually implementing is another set of skills. And so we can talk to you all day about that, right? Around how to do that. And so one of the things that Chrissy and I have talked about a lot is what is our role and how do we provide tools for people? And so that's really how our curriculum is built. It's around being, we call it a true facilitation model. And what we mean by true facilitation is that it's not a lecture like today. Is that the curriculum is set up around working exercises that people can work through, and then working with leadership to be able to figure out how they can implement in their teams and incorporate the language. And that's another reason for the archetypes, is that the language is incredibly important. The things that go from day to day are incredibly important, because we've all sat through the training with the person that's amazing and makes you want to be like, I'm going to sell $1 million of things. And then the next day, everybody goes back to what they're doing, right? And so building into not just the ideation of the curriculum, but how do we implement? So like, we're always going to give you more exercises than what we're going to get through in the training, because we want you to do them. Now, whether or not you do them, we can talk about that. We'll harass you. But so those are the kinds of things, is that to make real change in organizations and people in the world, it's a long-term commitment.
I was going to say, the only thing I was going to add is, so we do it in different. So like she is more of a not work environment, where your community hopefully holds you up. And what's that quote about like things being simple an idea, but difficult to execute? Like that's what all this stuff is. Like meditation, I get it. I breathe. I like try to, I don't totally get it, but like the parts of it I get seem really simple. Do I meditate every day? No. Why? I don't know. That's something to explore. But the coaching piece of like when you go into corporate work or delivering the content, like the power of a coach to hold you accountable, because the ideas are simple, but doing them, getting your body grounded, not reacting from that, like reptile brain, not feeling triggered with anxiety because you just messed up. All those things require sort of a mirror being held up. And so when we do release teams out after training, one of our like grounding philosophies is exactly what you said, which is like, we can do cool sessions and probably make people laugh and it'll be interesting. But if you wanted to infiltrate your team, your system, your workplace, like you need a coach who can be sort of, I don't work here. We have no relationship other than I'm a mirror to you. And we can have conversations. And so that component is something we feel really, and we're honest with people about, like, we can come, but if you wanted to maybe transform the space or the people, like we highly recommend a coach.
And there's so much evidence right now. I mean, I think COVID has really shined a spotlight on this idea that the execution and the absorption happens in community, right? So anything that we can do to facilitate that and to give people community and connection is going to help to implement those things, whatever they are, right? Like and it's healing, so people are all dealing with whatever they're dealing with. So it's all very, very important.
Yeah, and given it is very personal and transformational, and there can be that tendency where we can have a breakthrough and then sort of go back to what we know, back to what's familiar. That's why it's really useful that the program runs over 6 weeks. So then you can have a breakthrough and then go into your workplace, back to your families and friends and relationships and your community, and then see it through that lens, and then be able to come back the following week and then start to unpack, okay, well, how did that translate, and then be able to work through the layers of it over those 6 weeks. So then it provides a more meaningful, deeper transformation, having that touch point each week with the other participants in the group, because there's that camaraderie that we're all on this journey of transformation together and learning from each other.
I'm going to move to some Q&A here. The virtual folks have been popping that in the chat, and then Megan's been kind enough to send me some texts as I ask these questions. Maybe the audience here, if you have questions, you can. I'll ask you all if to step in. How can we create more space to step into the uncomfort?
I don't know if I have a profound answer to that question other than to like do it and opt into spaces where that is a practice that's being offered and asked. It is one of those weird things where someone has to go first. And then once someone goes first, next thing you know, like the whole, I mean, it's another like simple but difficult thing of like, it's like eating healthy or being healthy. It's like, it's really pretty simple. You eat good food and you move your body, except for it's like really hard to do. And I think that's the same with these conversations, which is like, I want to actually tell you that I'm going through something, but like that step over that bridge feels like a million miles away. And so if that's something that you want to do, it's also a practice. Opening up and being vulnerable is a practice. And some of us are gifted with it right out of the gate, either because we just have that impulse or we had a family that did that. And others of us have like silenced that voice and those parts of our stories for a long time. And so, and sometimes you go through something seismic that shakes it out of you. That was honestly my experience, and part of why I was so pulled to Failure Lab is I'm like desperate to talk about the things that we hide. And so I think like, I don't even know if that's the answer, but I do think like if that's something that you feel called that you need, you have to find spaces that do that, or people that do that, and you have to just do it, which I know is scary. And so I don't mean to undermine that part, but I was wearing my Failure Lab shirt the other day, and someone came up to me and they were like, "What's that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's, I gave her the heads up, and I'm like, I work there." She's like, "I would never want to work somewhere called Failure Lab," and I'm like, "But wouldn't you? Like, what if you could just mess up and be like, I messed up. I work at Failure Lab. Like, that's what we do. Like, we love failure. We talk about it. Like, I'm sorry I missed that deadline, but like, so like that's how like deep this stuff is. Like, we don't even know that we've been conditioned to want to not talk about it or just like, ugh, gross. Meanwhile, we're just like doing all these things every day. So hope I answered that person's question. I got excited.
No, that's awesome. Chloe, from you, I'm going to add to this question because I'm sure one of the reasons why there's like an Australian cohort and it's a global initiative, and we're curious about learning this because we're a global organization. What's like different regions have different cultures, different mindsets, react differently. So maybe you can throw that on top of your contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, like COVID has been a global experience. We've all shared in this challenge and it's really unified the world. But we in Australia, we have had a bit of a different experience in that we managed it differently. And we are very much back to face with very few cases in Australia. So this is where in Australia, you can see the space behind me here. This is where we're actually going to be delivering programs both in person and online. And some of the research around this has found that there are some people that are desperately wanting to get back into the room and have that human interaction, having felt very isolated and separated, while there are other people who are going, well, online's actually really convenient, and taking away those barriers of participation because of distance, time, or other commitments. So I think that's where, by having both an online cohort and an in-room cohort, it's ensuring that everyone has got the opportunity to participate.
Anybody in our in-person audience have any questions? Erica, can you use a microphone?
I just think it's really cool that you both are very, very positive, like how you speak and how you share. How do you kind of navigate not falling into a lot of negativity, like with this? Is that part of your training? Like, do you teach people tools of like talking through failure, but then still maintaining an optimistic, lens?
That's a super, super good question. It's called Failure Lab. And like Chrissy said, occasionally we'll get pushback. Like occasionally we've had people that are like, we totally love your programming and we will implement it in this enormous, huge, life-changing contract if you change your name. Like that. We're like, yeah, no, that you're missing the point. You're not ready for us. Like there is that piece, but I would say that the entire experience of connecting with people around their stories is so inherently uplifting. I wish I had a better answer for this, that I was like, yes, and here are the tools for how to not fall down your pit of despair. But it really just is uplifting. I mean, I think that people are so, people are just, we are the same. Like people want to be seen. People want to be understood. Those are basic human interactions, and they're kind of almost values neutral in some ways, right? Like that they're not, if you can share in a safe space, then that even if it's hard, it feels positive. I really honestly haven't had like really sad experiences. I mean, I think that I'm answering this so poorly. I apologize. One of the things that we do and has been built into the architecture of how we process is that kind of the acknowledgement of that we are asking people to do difficult things, and trying to do that in a way. It's kind of like when you're talking to a little kid, or it's like you have to make your voice sound like it's no big deal. But it is a big deal. So you acknowledge that as well. And so like, for instance, in the live events, there's always a musical or entertainment piece that's in between the stories. And the purpose of that is to be a palate cleanser, like an emotional palate cleanser, is for us to all in community experience the rhythmic feeling of music, to be able to do this thing for us to reset. And that's kind of part of the actual skill building, is that we can experience many emotions all at once, very close to one another. Like that's okay. Like that's an okay thing to do. And we have mirrored that in the training as well. So one of the things in the redesign of the training is that we wanted to take all of the things that were really, really transformational, amazing about the live events, which we have all of this evidence that it's amazing and that people really resonate with it, and bring it into the training. And so in the training, we have palette cleansers in between the hard stuff to be like, here is an adult coloring book of a swear word. Do this coloring book thing and let's come back and read. And because that's a skill too, right? That's a skill too, is to be able to feel and acknowledge and honor your responses, and then also make choices about how to push forward. And to me, I don't know if I'm just like, I'm not a super positive person. Like, so, but I think that's really uplifting. Like,
Chrissy's awfully quiet now.
Chrissy's my voice.
I am the palate cleanser during most of the training. No, I'm just kidding. One of the things I was going to say is, and I think it's kind of just restating what you're saying in a different way, but I think I've been shocked at watching groups have the conversations, which is like, one, the talking about it for some people, depending on how much they've processed, whatever the thing is, which ranges big and small, is like the release of it out, sometimes isn't as negative as it felt when they held it in. And then the power of the group asking a question to the person, whether the experience, like we had someone talk about having a difficult birth, and in the session was processing like, I feel like a failure for like the way I gave birth, which like I didn't even realize until we were sitting in this.
New. She had never had that revelation.
Right. And so that was a heavy thing for her. It wasn't like we weren't making light of it or jokes. It was hard. It was heavy, but I think the release came in, one, her sharing it, and two, other people offering, similar or even unrelated experiences around this concept of like, I'm holding huge feelings about a failing that I can recognize as not logical. But when you said that, it made me think about other things. So it shifts the connection so quickly just because of the topic and the questions, and the permission, that it doesn't feel negative, although sometimes it feels heavy, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and quite often when you bump into someone, one of the things that we instinctively say is, "How are you?" The thing is, people don't actually want to know how are you. If you actually were to say, "Well, it's been a challenging week and all these things have been happening," people go, "Whoa, too much information." They just expect you to say, "Oh, I'm good." And you, "Oh, yeah, I'm good." And it's a very superficial level of engagement. It's more of just like a hello. But so this is where it's like, if you're going to say to someone, "How are you?" do you actually want to know how they are? And so this is where having these Failure Lab sessions is that safe space to actually genuinely ask that, "How are you?" and to actually unpack and work through what comes up. And for many people, they don't have a safe space to be able to do that.
So we are a little over on time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each one of you for any parting thoughts. And then after we run through those, I'd love for you to explain how people can find you and tap into this incredible resource. All right. We can start with Chloe.
Parting thoughts, Chloe, parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts. Well, I think that it's wonderful that we've actually got this connection in that, that this is these archetypes are universal. So whether you're in the US or in Australia, these are the human condition. So it's wonderful that we've been able to forge this collaboration and extend the reach and impact of this really important work. And it's such an honor to be able to hold space for these conversations around failure here in Australia and New Zealand.
I'll just do a parting thought about failure in women, which is like, if you are a woman who sort of any of this resonates with in terms of like your ability to take risk or the expectations you have of yourself or of other women, or if you know a woman who might fit that bill, designing Failure Lab, she has been so fulfilling. And even though we made jokes about, I know that that's true, but really immersing yourself in some of the facts about it, and also thinking about how we live in this system and navigate it and offering skills really is sort of like my new passion. So just a plug for Failure Lab, she in the summer. If you know someone or you're someone who might be interested, ask us after this and learn more, or go to the website.
failurelab.com/she. We're just really grateful to be here. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I made actual sentences and words in front of real people. Yay me. This is our first actual in-person thing. And these lovely people over here have witnessed me being very awkward because I've lost all of my social abilities. And so thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Corey, for setting this up. It was really fun.
Of course, so much gratitude for the generosity of your time, and Chloe across the planet in a whole nother season. It's so great to have you here. Yeah. She's just like, yeah.
But we're actually beaming in. It's actually tomorrow here. We're beaming in from the future.
Put it off as long as you can. I would like our tech team, if we could put all the faces on the screen, and for those who are or would like to, you can maybe turn your cameras on, because I'd like to get a virtual and in-person big round of applause for our guests. Thank you again so much for the generosity of being here. And thank you everyone who tuned in virtually. We're going to keep the Zoom alive just for as long as it's necessary, so you all can exchange contact info and continue to network online. We still have plenty of seltzer, wine, and beer, and water and coffee to drink here. And our next event, we're doing third Thursdays. It's going to be the third Thursday of June here at Little Space Studio, featuring Sharuk Amala from Grand Valley State University Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. This is going to be held 1 month before her 20th year anniversary at Grand Valley. And the incredible body of work that she's done and really moving lives forward and entrepreneurship forward in our region and all the connections globally. So want to celebrate that. Again, one more round of applause to celebrate these women. And thank you all very much.